Thank you very much, Zoe. Thanks for inviting me here. Last time I had a chance to speak was in 2011 at St. Lawrence College, and I really appreciated that opportunity because we had just gone through a very interesting time in the economy. We had just seen the 2008 recession hit the United States, and the psychology that it had, the psychological impact that it had on donors on both sides of the border. But we started Funding Matters in 1997. In 1997 was a recession year as well. And we quickly realized that one of the things that we had to bear in mind was, even though not-for-profit organizations were asking us to help them raise money, we sort of understood that there's another underlying element to all of this, and that is organizational sustainability. How are organizations going to continue sort of in these dip periods, and these lulls, and these economic downturns? And the methodology around that was, how can we help organizations looking at their annual operational capital requirements, but how can we help them at the same time engage in conversations with those that are closest to them around building endowments? So we have spent the last 18 years trying to educate charities why endowments are important and why their members should be understanding why investing in an endowment now will be their legacy long-term and for the organization's long-term sustainability. So that's why I'm titling this Engaging, Informing, and Empowering. It's really empowering the platform. And the platform is disruptive because it's bringing advisors, it's bringing organizations, it's bringing donors who are clients all together to understand from one perspective exactly what it is that an organization needs to be successful long term. And I'm going to get into some of the basis around this. But you'll see, the agenda is pretty straightforward. It has cultural references in each of the steps along the way. Some you'll recognize, some you won't, but I've built in sort of these cultural touchstones in my life that I feel have sort of shaped my way of thinking. And I think at the end of this presentation, you'll see how it sort of fits in with your way and your approach, whether you're a professional advisor, or you're a charity advisor, whether you represent a charity, whether you sit on a board. That's what we're trying to address. So the pressures to raise more money. Well, this is one of my favorites. Because when it first happened...
Yeah, what can I do for you, Ron? You just tell me, what can I do for you?
It's a very personal, very important thing. Hell, it's a family night. Are you ready, Jack? I'm ready. I want to make sure you're ready, brother. Here it is. Show me the money.
We walk into board meetings, and board of directors say, show me the money. Where are we at in terms of the programming? Where are we at in terms of raising the money for programming, for capital? It's show me the money. Well, the money has been changing hands on an ongoing basis. There's a tremendous amount of wealth, as you're aware, that are transferring from one generation to the next. That money is being demonstrated on a number of different levels. It's a competitive marketplace. There are an increasing number of not-for-profits that are coming along every year competing. Now, within Eastern Ontario, there is the built-in market of organizations that know one another that compete for the same dollars. But across the country, it's the same sort of an impact that's happening all the way across the regions and the cities and the country. There's an increase in the amount of money that's been donated since 2013. So if we looked at 2008 and we saw a dip, from 2013 to now, we've seen an increase in the amount of donation, dollars donated that CRA have actually documented, of 3.5%. The number of donors has decreased. So if your bet is, as an organization, this is it, as you do your planning, you're making a little bit of a bet that your annual donors will continue to support you. But what you're finding is the number of donors has decreased, and it'll continue to decrease. Because we've got an aging population, and people die off. And if they don't make any provisions, well, that's the last dollar that you're getting. There aren't new dollars coming along. And you have to find ways to harvest them, cultivate them, and you have to find ways to take that annual donor and translate them into a long-term legacy donor, an endowment donor, a major gift donor, move them from one category to the next. The good news is that donations, the number of donations, the size of them have increased. The bad news for charities is you didn't get it. The charities weren't the primary recipients of it because we've seen the steady decrease. Then who got the money? Where did the money go? The money went to donor-advised funds, private foundations, trusts. That's where the money went. So smart money then became the financial institutions getting in on the discussions with their clients about educating and informing their clients about creating this long-term investment for charitable purposes, tax minimization purposes. And what happened on the charitable side? It didn't grasp on that, didn't jump on that bandwagon at that point. Didn't for maybe a number of different reasons. But those donors that they were cultivating the relationships with kind of moved their big money over to setting up some of the larger foundations. So the private foundations Canada saw a hockey stick increase in terms of growth. And charities saw a steady decline in that time period. So it's something to keep in mind. Why did this happen? Well, why it happened is for one reason. This is one of my favorite commercials. This guy does all these great commercials. He does it with Alec Baldwin. He does it with Charles Barkley. And he asks some very fun...
What's in your wallet?
So the charities, okay, so do you have a wallet? Yeah. Can you open it up?
Sure.
Okay. Because I want to know what's in your wallet.
Not much. Some stamps,
Okay, stamps.
receipt from buying the stamps.
Okay,
I have my driver's license,
right,
credit card, and a debit card,
great,
and my shopper's optimum card.
right, very
My
good,
PC Plus points.
excellent,
Yeah. And my proof of address for voting. 'Cause I
Perfect.
just moved here.
So I kind of get the idea that you may be somewhat typical of individuals in your cohort. You'd have a credit card, you'd have a debit card, you might have a check, you might, like the idea of carrying a blank check, cash. And so when the typical thought of an individual approaching someone for a charitable gift, as great as the need may be within the organization, the behavioral pattern of an individual is to think about what's in their wallet vis-a-vis what's in their bank account. So you start to think as an extension of what's in your wallet, what can I afford? What is my level of affordability to make this type of a gift to the organization? And so what we start to try and rationalize is that what's in your wallet is important to you for your lifestyle. Whatever you may have as a credit card donation, as a debit card donation, as writing a check, giving cash to your favorite charitable cause, is a stop and think point. Because what's common to giving cash, putting it on your Visa, putting on your debit card, or writing a check? All those all those donation vehicles, you've already paid the tax on. You've already paid the tax on that. But you're making a donation, so it's after-tax dollars that you've actually used to think about making that donation. So what we start to look at is what's important. Well, what's important in terms of this entire conversation, the group of individuals that we're talking to, and the wealth transfer that's taking place. Well, when we started this 7 years ago, there was a study that was done which indicated that 7 years ago, $41 trillion was going to transfer from one generation to the next in North America. So use the rule of tenths, that's Canada. So $4 trillion is going to transfer from one generation to the next over the next 30 years. And what do people want with their money? They want to make sure that they have enough money in their accounts to pay their bills, to maintain their lifestyle, so their families are secure. So that they are secure, their families are secure, that their kids, their grandkids, their nieces, nephews, friends, they all have that same level of security, that they're living the lifestyle that they're accustomed to. Going back to the behavioral thinking of when you're talking to a donor. But they also want to be philanthropic. They appreciate the hospital. They appreciate the schools. They appreciate the community services. They appreciate the arts. They appreciate their faith and all the things that tie into who they are and what their values are and what their beliefs are. And so all that becomes part and parcel of it. But when it comes time, like Brian was talking about, when the transfer of those assets actually does take place, what happens? What really happens? Are the kids the beneficiaries? The grandkids the beneficiaries? The charity the beneficiary? Is the government the beneficiary? Like, where is that, worked out with these individuals here in terms of the determiners of their wealth, of their assets, of whatever they've got currently while they're alive, while they're competent, while they have the ability to make these decisions? Where is that taking place? So I'm going to pull up one thing, and this is the fact that when you have elderly individuals who are looking for advice, one of the first places that these individuals tend to turn to are their adult children. And they're looking to their adult children, and their adult children may not necessarily have all the answers. They may not, and they may feel absolutely uncomfortable in having these conversations. But the fact is that most elderly individuals do want to have some sort of guidance, because if they don't have the guidance with that entire wealth transfer that's taking place, what we want to look at is getting into the idea of preemptive planning. We don't want to have the grandma situation played out.
That stuff down, it's my grandmother. Now, kid, we're just doing our jobs.
What are you talking about?
Grandmother hasn't paid her taxes in over a decade.
What? Grandma, you didn't pay your taxes?
I would have, but I didn't have any money.
Where are you taking all her stuff? I'm not taking her stuff, okay? The government is. It's not like I'm taking her stuff over to my place or something like that, all right? So don't get mad at me.
But she's an old lady. I mean, look at her. She's old. You can't just take her stuff. She's too old.
I'm sorry. I have no discretion here. Her stuff is now our stuff.
Well, at least we got the house, right? I mean, I can bring furniture from my place over here. We're going to be okay, Grandma.
Now you're really going to be mad. I have to take the house, too.
Oh, look, now, my grandfather built this house with his bare hands. My grandma's been here over 60 years. You can't take her house.
Mrs. Gilmore owes the IRS $270,000 in back taxes.
Oh, my.
We have to take the house. And if you can't get the money together in 90 days, we're going to have to sell the house to someone else. You hate me, don't you?
No, I don't hate you.
He hates me.
Here's a classic example, Happy Gilmore. But the issue is here, his grandmother, if she could have had a conversation with somebody in her family, a professional advisor, someone that could have helped her as you can see, Grandma is cash poor, asset rich. Just as many of the individuals that we have conversations with, they have enough money to be living the lifestyle that they're accustomed to, but they're asset rich in certain ways. And the government looks at your assets at different points in time and different levels of taxation on different assets. Whether it's registered investments are taxed in a certain way, investment assets such as stocks and mutual funds. You could look at real estate, you could look at private corporations, you could look at sole proprietorships. Everything has a tax rate associated with it. A piece of art, you know, that may have been acquired at a certain point has a taxable capital gain to it. So the guy from the IRS may not be necessarily wrong, but the fact is that here's poor Grandma, and she's clearly old, and she really was looking for somebody somewhere in her family that may have come to have a conversation with to take her to the next level. And this is part of the whole overall planning process. So when we actually look at people and their money and what do they think about it, first thing is that they do want to live in the lifestyle that they're accustomed to. They live a certain way, they want to maintain that way. They really don't want to change. They don't want it any higher or any lower, but they're at that level. They want to support their families. They know that in some cases, this is still an important element that gives them gratitude, that they can continue to support their children, their grandchildren, and other people within their circle. And they do want to give back to the community. So knowing all that makes this really interesting, because 60% of Canadians don't have a current estate plan. So when I travel across the country, when I go into the US, we're traveling across the US, 60% of North Americans don't have a current estate plan. And by virtue of not having a current estate plan, it is an easy conclusion for me or any of you to say that this person is not ready to make a major gift, is not ready to make a planned gift. They're not in that space because they haven't got their own planning. They're Grandma. They're in that situation. She may have a lot of different assets that they've just bundled up and are ready to take away, but she's not ready, or another person may not be ready. And one of the things that I really enjoy talking to people about, if we're going out and doing a campaign, one of the things I really enjoy in walking an individual through is asking them a question. Hey, you know what? I know you love the hospital and everything that the hospital does for the community. What I'd like to find out is, just out of the blue, do you have a current will? That's what everybody does. They slap their forehead. I've been meaning to do it. It's on the top of my list to go out there and do it. So I'm going to ask everybody here, who's got a current will? You guys are show-offs. Okay, so good for you. How many, okay, you can take it to the next one. How many of you have charity built into your will? Ah, fewer. So the reality is since I started in fundraising 20 years ago, this number has remained the same. This number gets published by the Center for Philanthropy at the University of Indiana. It gets published by the CAGP. This number hasn't changed in 20 years. It's either they haven't changed it and they don't have the numbers to change it, but we collaborate with a guy at the university at Texas Tech, and his name is Dr. Russell James. And so Russell and I have worked together. He's on our advisory board. And so I ran this number by Russell because he's done empirical studies on this. And he says the number hasn't changed. It still stays the same. Why? Why, when we have all these professionals out there trying to convince individuals to put charitable giving in their wills? Whether it's their lawyers, their accountants, the financial advisors, the charities, Why? Why hasn't that number changed? I'm still trying to grasp, with what's going on. And when you talk to the donor, what they really want to look at is kind of doing the right thing. But
help me out here. Did I dream it, or did I have $1,600,000 on my desk in cash? When I close my eyes, I can still see it. It's burned into my retinas like I was staring into the sun. No one on God's green earth knew we had it. We could have split it 50-50. We could have gone home with $800,000 each, tax-free.
Your point being?
Why didn't we? What stopped us?
I remember you saying something about doing the right thing.
I don't even know what that means.
even when it's, it falls out of the sky onto your lap, and people still want to, at the end of the day, do something good. They want to contribute to a common good. They want to make a difference. They want to take the right path in life. And when we start to look at why people do certain things and how do we get people to understand how they can personally benefit as a result of it, we start to take it at the next level. And that is looking at what we are calling the giving gap. This is your typical annual donor right here, the actual gift in green. The big histogram in blue is the potential. So the potential is what you actually see for that donor. When you look at the donor and you're saying, we are targeting this amount of money for this donor to potentially donate, but they're at that actual gift, how do we address the giving gap? How do you get that person from where they're at to the potential? What is it that they need to hear? What is it they need to see? What is it they need to feel about doing this? And we feel that there's a reason for the giving gap. And there's a reason why we're at 4% in terms of estate planning. Whereas in terms of charitable bequests within estates. The donor isn't sure how much they should give now. There is no, so we have a hypothetical number for a donor of $250,000. How did you come up with that number? How's that number the right number for me? The donor's confused because they're still back in what's in your wallet. They're not looking at what the other sources of funds may be. So to help them understand how to understand that number in a more concrete, comprehensive way is important. 2, they don't understand the best ways to give. Remember, 99.5% of all donations that your charities receive are in the form of cash, check, Visa, debit. That's where 99.5%, half of 1% of all donations come from appreciated assets. That's where the private foundations have come from. And then the advisor, the relationship of all the advisors together. So this is one of my favorite financial advisors.
Hey, welcome home.
Thank you, thank you.
Nice vacation?
Wonderful. Tell me, how's my favorite person in all the world?
Gee, I don't know what to say.
Well, just tell me how he is. Mr. Clampett.
Fine. Granny Jethro are on the back to the hill.
What?
Oh, it's all right. Mr. Clanford's still here.
And Mr. Money?
Still here.
So we start to see the role that the advisors, the relationship between the professional advisor and their client, the charity and their donor client, and trying to build that, synergy together. And that is that maybe the advisor isn't engaged in the right way by the charity, by the donor. The donor hasn't approached their advisor to talk about their intent. Maybe the advisor hasn't talked to their client about this. So Charles Schwab did a study of all of their advisors across the United States, and found that 80% of their advisors would have more conversations with their clients if they had the tools and the training to do so. It was the common finding. So out of all those individuals. And we see that because there's a disconnect. There's a disconnect that exists between the charity, the donor/client, and the advisor. So we know that the charity and the donor talk, and they talk often, and they talk about the mission and the vision and the needs, and the vision and the objectives of the donor and what they'd like to see accomplished. We see that the advisor and the client have a strong ongoing relationship. But the challenge that exists is maybe not all advisors talk to the advisors of that client. So the lawyer may not talk to the financial advisor and the lawyer may not be talking to the accountant. And so it's this real disconnect that takes place. But it goes back to that Schwab scenario about the 80% having the training and the tools to be doing so. But if we can bring all that together on a platform, and that platform happens to bring all three elements together. And the three elements are that we've got the donor, who's the client, with all the advisors, and the charity on the same platform, talking about the same issue at the same time. We get magic. This is magic that happens. We take individuals who are $500 a year donors to a hospital, West Park Foundation, $500 a year, last 5 years, makes a $600,000 donation. Because they realized that the $500 was coming out of their wallet, but that the $600,000 was going to come out of an appreciated asset. But until they actually saw what the opportunities and the different assets that they could have and start thinking about, that wasn't on the table. So we start to look at the situation of a farmer who has a good crop year, lots of money comes in, he's asset rich in a number of ways through his investments in his land and other initiatives, and sees that he wants to make a donation. He likes a project. He has never been a donor, but he's been made aware of this particular initiative, and says, "I'll give you $1 million in cash." Wow. I think you should talk to your accountant first and figure out what the best way to do this is. I'll write, instead of writing a check, maybe there's a better way to structure it. Where does a charity turn down $1 million, for a person to write a check? It's really to start having that conversation around what is the right number for them. Well, the right number happened to be a much larger number than the $1 million. When the accountant actually sat down with us, we went through the conversation, which turned into a phenomenally large multi-million-dollar gift. So we're focusing on bridging the gap. So what's going through that donor's mind? So if I can just show you a quick illustration in terms of a software presentation that can be in your office, on your iPhone, on your tablet, on your iPad, on your PC, wherever you are, sending it to your donor and sending it to your client to get them to start thinking about changing that 4% number in terms of charitable bequests or major gifts. That's what I'd like to show you now. I need some technical help. So, our legacy, our tomorrow. And the idea of this is your typical charitable organization out there trying to raise money for their particular campaign. But one of the things that donors need to know is what are the best ways for them to give? So all too often, the charity will put on their website what some of the strategies for the best ways for them to give are. You can give stocks, you can give mutual funds, you can give registered investments, you can put something in your will, and there's a little definition, syllabus of all these things. But we know, just as you are here today, that we're all visual learners. We pick up visual cues based on, you know, what we are going to get and what's going to stay with us. So the idea of seeing the impact of your donation. So you're all going to be the donor, okay? And I'm going to go through this with you. So we're going to start. You see, select a province. So pick your province.
Ontario.
Ontario? Okay, if you say so.
I'm bookkeeping. I don't have a lot of that imagination.
Okay. So we ask a question. The next prompt question. This is what you do in the privacy and comfort of your own home or in your bookkeeping office. Okay. You can sit here, and no one's going to see what you're doing. But we're going to ask for you to select what your.
I'm going to use some imagination.
Okay. Because we have what the household income levels are based on the tax brackets in the province of Ontario.
Let's see, we're going to go for our ideal. Let's go for over 220,000.
220,000, okay. So let's do that.
That's imagination.
I think she's asking for a decrease in pay. Okay, now the next one is select an asset to donate. So the idea of having them, what's your name?
My name's Tammy.
Tammy. The idea of having Tammy think about an asset to donate is to have Tammy consider something which might be a stock, a mutual fund, non-residential real estate, which could be a cabin, a cottage, farm, recreational property, RSP, RIF, or small business shares. Nowhere do you see Visa, debit card, check, cash, because that's 99.5% of all donors are going to give you that. And this is where we're trying to shift the way of thinking for the donor so they can see this for themselves in the privacy of their own home. So pick an asset.
Real estate.
Perfect. Okay? So we're going to have it that your asset, real estate, is worth $500,000 and you paid $100,000 for it. And you've got a capital gain of $400,000 and you owe how much on that? How much tax do you owe?
Well,
It's right here on that.
$99,060.
Right. So the question happens to be, of that $99,060, Tammy, how much do you want to leave to CRA? Okay. Well, so what we're trying to do is create a dynamic interface between you and Giftabulator NOW that'll allow you to kind of play around with this. It'll allow you to go over here and slide this and see what happens if you were to donate $126,000 of that. If you were to sell, you've got a $50,688 tax credit. You still owe CRA $48,000, and the cost down here in yellow of your actual contribution would be $75,628. The difference between this and that. So you can actually see you've given $126,000 to your favorite charity, and the cost of it has been reduced. And this is a starting point where you can actually input a number here or slide the bar here to see what the outcomes may be. So you start to slide it to another point, tax decreases down to $21,000, your donation is $192,000, and the actual cost of it is $150,000 because CRA is your partner giving you a $77,000 tax credit. So what we've taken is the complicated calculus that's associated with doing tax planning, asset appreciation, donation giving, to looking at strategic asset giving. Because what we've shown you is the different baskets. So how about if we go over here and we're going to ask So Zoe, pick another asset.
If I can see you.
Okay, you've got stocks, mutual, RSP.
And stocks.
Okay, stocks. So we're going to have stocks. So this stock is $25,000. You paid $15,000 for it. You got a $10,000 capital gain. How about if we change the stock because somebody had some great information on their stock, and it's worth $250,000, and they've got a $235,000 capital gain, and they owe $58,100 in tax. So again, we can actually go in there and play around and, come up with a number. Here's a number of $59,000. Well, the $59,000 donation, let's see what happens here. Let's try that again. So it's really meant to engender play, for an individual to start seeing for themselves, and how in college, university, social service, healthcare initiatives, where the donors have actually been able to go on the website, click on it, play around with it in the privacy of their own home. They've actually had an email blast or an email link sent to them where they can play with it. And they can actually start to say, hey, I'd like to find some more information. I can go down here and contact the executive director, the director of development, talk to them about it, talk to their financial advisor, because they can get in touch with they can now, which is important, remember grandma. Grandma's being evicted, but if grandma had this, if she could just get her grandson, Adam Sandler, Happy Gilmore, and he can go on there, play around with it, send it to her financial advisor. You could send this information to all the related parties. Remember, we want to create that platform where accountants, lawyers, financial advisors, the charity, all are working on the same platform. Because for you to reach out to 5 donors every day and call them and get through to them, you're giving them something that's thought-provoking, that'll help them understand the benefits and merits associated with estate planning, financial planning, tax planning, and philanthropic planning. Because once we have those elements in place, we can really start looking at a major gift, a transformational donation that involves current giving and estate giving. So that's what we have seen transpire. We've raised over $400 million. We've been through numerous recessions as a firm. We continually have refined the approach that we know that the largest donations come from individuals. And the individuals are sitting on the most amount of wealth in their assets. How do we translate that into activity to benefit the organizations that you represent? So what we move forward on is there's the give now, and then there's the give later. So we look at give later, and we go into starting here, picking Ontario as the province. The current value of the estate, let's just assume that not including the principal residence, is $1 million. So it'll be stocks, mutuals, registered investments, some other property that might be associated with it, and the original cost of the estate. Assume that some of the premiums on their they might have a small insurance policy, but if we put in a number for them like $200,000, so we see that the number one concern, the number one fear that a donor has is, I'm going to be left with nothing. My family's going to be left with nothing. Whatever is left, I want to leave to my family. I want my heirs to be receiving this. We hear this all the time. And so we say, okay, I agree with you. You should get everything that you've earned and be allowed to transfer that to your heirs. There's no question about it. of whatever's left, how much do you want to go to CRA? Answer? Right. So if we can illustrate that there may be the provision that CRA will be coming in and taking $179,000 of that $1 million estate, and we were able to suggest to them that maybe a $50,000 bequest might result in an estate gift, charitable bequest of $50,000, tax credit of $20,000, reduce the tax from 170 to 150, and the heirs are still left with $799,000. Now they can see it. They know that their heirs are going to be taken care of. They know that there will be a charitable bequest left, and they can make that provision. They can also look at, what was that, they wanted to leave CRA nothing? Well, if we looked at today's scenario, and this is a primer, this is the primer for the donor. If you wanted to kind of think about what might be a scenario, if $425,000 was the amount, CRA ends up with zero because $170,000 tax credit offsets the tax obligation, and leaving the heirs with $574,000 as another option. And the third is the idea of a residual. The residual is meant, again, so if you wanted to leave, how much? 20%? Say you left 20% as a charitable bequest. So if we look at 20%, that's $200,000, $80,000 tax credit, $90,000 to CRA, and $709,000 to the family. So we're still being able to actually, and how we've done this, in many ways, is the donor gets it. We're in a different part of the country. They're sitting down and playing with it. You can have a conversation with them over the telephone. That you can actually hear how they're going through it and see how it's playing out. And in many cases, the organizations that are now moving forward with this are seeing how they can be, extending their reach. You don't have to send it to 2,000 people immediately. If you do it as the way you target your conversations and your discussions with your donors, when you go to the Tim Hortons and you sit down and want to talk to them about something that may be of interest and benefit to them. Because charities play an important role. The not-for-profit sector plays an important role. Important role in terms of the social fabric of the community. But one of the important elements of the social fabric is having everybody maintain their own self-sustainability, having enough money. And part of that conversation is financial literacy. This is the root of financial literacy for individuals because it's a real disconnect of where people are at right now with their planning, where they need to be at, and how they can be, with that proper planning, making more informed, educated, empowered decisions around their philanthropy. So that's the essence of what we're aiming to achieve, is we get besieged with show me the money. We know that most people are going to what's in your wallet for the funding. We take a look at people wanting to do the right things, for the people and their families. And then last but not least is everyone loves their donors. Everyone loves their clients. And you know what? If we find a way to create, this platform discussion that we're all talking to the individuals that are closest to us on a level that everyone understands the exact same thing at the same time, then we're all winning at the end of the game. And the beauty of this is that it's paperless as well. It's environmentally friendly. We're not churning out reams of paper to try to send something, sending out mailings and that never get opened, that sit and pile up for people. Something that's dynamic because we know that the cohorts are now into their 70s, late 70s, that are on the internet looking for this information. And then the millennials that are looking for this type of information as well. Mark Zuckerberg is a millennial. Mark Zuckerberg doesn't write checks. Mark Zuckerberg transfers shares. The same, at the opposite end of the spectrum, is when you've got the civics, the people who in their 70s and 80s, who are now looking at being asset rich and giving back. But they're looking for how can they do it. This is the opportunity. It's disruptive. It is a new way to look at things. It's a new opportunity to bring something to your clients, to your donors, in a way that changes their perspective on things. So I think I've been able to cover everything off that really speaks to how we have been able to have great success in just this year alone. I think we're well over 12 or 13 seven-figure gifts from individuals. Individuals who've never given seven-figure gifts before, never given six-figure gifts before. And I want to tell you, I could tell you how many six-figure gifts that we've received. But it's just working with individuals and educating them and getting to their advisors. You get faster, you get to the point a lot quicker with individuals when you can give them that peace of mind, remove the fear about what a major gift may mean to them and what a planned gift may mean to them. So thank you.